So how do you beat a military genius who seems absolutely invincible? A commander who's crushed your armies time and time again? Well, for the Roman Republic pushed right to the edge of total annihilation, the answer was completely unthinkable. You just stop fighting. Let's get into the incredible story of how Rome saved itself by embracing a strategy that everyone thought was cowardly, shameful, and just plain un-Roman. And this is the guy we're talking about, Hannibal Barca. As a kid, he literally swore this oath to his father, a vow of eternal unending hatred for Rome. So you have to understand, he wasn't just some general. He was a man on a mission driven his entire life by one single goal: to bring the Republic to its knees. So how did this nightmare for Rome even begin? Well, it kicked off with one of the most audacious, most insane military moves in all of history. Yeah, you heard that right. Instead of some predictable attack from the sea, Hannibal marches his entire army, including war elephants, over the treacherous frozen Alps. The Romans they thought it was impossible. No way. They were getting ready for a war way over in Spain. Hannibal suddenly appearing in their own backyard sent a shockwave of pure panic through the entire Republic. And he didn't just arrive, he started winning, immediately, decisively. At the Trebia, he tricks a Roman army into an icy river and just shatters it. The very next year at Lake Trasimene, he uses the morning fog to set up this perfect ambush and wipes out another entire army. But believe it or not, all of this was just the warm-up act for Rome's darkest day. What happened at the Battle of Cannae? Well, it was so catastrophic, it nearly ended the Roman Republic right then and there, period. Okay, so Rome decides to go all in. They raise the largest army they've ever fielded. We're talking nearly 80,000 men to finally crush this guy once and for all. But Hannibal, he was a tactical master. He actually let his center line buckle on purpose, drawing the massive Roman force deeper and deeper into a trap. And then, bam, his cavalry smashed into their flanks, completely surrounding them. The result was just a methodical slaughter. In a single afternoon, something like 50,000 Roman soldiers were killed. They were packed in so tightly they could barely even lift their arms to fight. They were just cut down where they stood. It is still one of the bloodiest single days of battle in all of human history. Back in Rome, the news from Cannae caused absolute despair. This quote here really captures the mood. The Senate was paralyzed with grief, with fear. A lot of them thought, this is it, it's over. That Hannibal had finally definitively broken the back of Roman military power. But out of that total desperation, a new, totally radical idea started to form. It turns out Rome's survival wasn't going to depend on its strength, but on its patience. A man named Quintus Fabius Maximus gets appointed dictator to save the Republic. And his plan was just shocking. He basically argued that trying to beat Hannibal in a straight-up fight was suicide. He said the only way to win was to refuse to give Hannibal the one thing he wanted most, a battle. And this, of course, became known as the Fabian strategy. The whole concept is pretty simple, actually. Don't fight. Instead, you harass the enemy, you attack their supply lines. You shadow their every move and you slowly, painfully bleed them dry. It's not about one big glorious knockout punch, it's about winning by 1,000 tiny cuts. Now you have to understand just how fundamentally un-Roman this was. The entire Roman military identity was built on aggressive, head-on decisive battles, on winning glory, on conquering. Fabius was proposing the exact opposite of all of that. To them, it felt a lot like cowardice. He was asking them to value survival over glory, patience over aggression, and the backlash was fierce. His political rivals, the public, they mocked him relentlessly. They gave him this nickname, cumptator, which means the delayer, and trust me, it was not a compliment. They saw his strategy as a national disgrace. Despite all the opposition, the strategy was put into practice, and it turned the entire Italian peninsula into this grueling, brutal battlefield of hide and seek. So here's how the plan actually worked on the ground. Roman armies would follow Hannibal's forces from the hills, never engaging directly, but always watching. Little cavalry units would launch these lightning raids on his foraging parties, burning wagons, disrupting supplies. The whole idea was to make life for Hannibal's army a living hell, slowly grinding down their morale and their numbers. And then it got even more brutal. Fabius implemented a scorched earth policy. Now just think about that for a second. The Roman government was telling its own citizens to abandon their homes, burn their own fields, destroy their own property, all of it, just to deny food and resources to Hannibal's invading army. This strategy, it may have kept Romain the fight, but the cost of this long, brutal war was absolutely staggering. And it would leave these deep scars in Roman society for a century to come. I mean, the human cost alone was just jaw-dropping. You can see it right here in the Roman census numbers. The constant warfare, the destruction of all that farmland, the sheer exhaustion of a 15-year conflict right on your home soil, it took an immense toll on the population. But the long-term impact, that was even more profound. You see, the scorched earth policy and Hannibal's raids destroyed countless small family farms, the very backbone of the Republic. All these displaced peasants flocked to the cities with nothing. And in the meantime, the wealthy elites swooped in and bought up all this abandoned land for cheap, creating these huge slave-run plantations. This supercharged wealth inequality, creating a massive societal problem that would just fester and eventually help tear the Republic apart a century later. Okay, so if the Fabian strategy was so costly and didn't actually defeat Hannibal in Italy, how did Rome win? How did this end? What the delay our strategy did was buy Rome its most precious resource, time. Time to recover from those devastating losses, time to rebuild its legions, and crucially, time for a new military genius to rise through the ranks, one who had spent years studying Hannibal's methods, Scipio Africanus. Scipio understood that the best defense was a good offense. He did to Carthage exactly what Hannibal had done to Rome. He invaded their home turf in North Africa. It was this brilliant strategic move that immediately forced Carthage's hand. They had to recall Hannibal from Italy to come defend the capital. And so, on the plains of Zama, the two great generals finally met for that one big, decisive battle. But now, after all those years of attrition in Italy, Hannibal's army was depleted and weary. Scipio's forces, on the other hand, were fresh and well-drilled and using tactics he had literally learned from watching his rival. Scipio won the day, defeated Hannibal, and ended the war. Rome was saved. But that victory came at a tremendous price. Rome survived, yes, but it was changed forever. The war accelerated the very things that would eventually doom the Republic. The hollowing out of the small farmer class, this massive concentration of wealth, and the social tensions that would later explode in the Civil War. Which leaves us with a final question. What does it mean to win a war for survival if the nation that comes out the other side is fundamentally different and maybe even weaker than the one that went into it?